Welcome to the Exposure Magazine podcast from the heart of the British nuclear test survivor community.
The Forgotten Heroes, The Flash and the Fade. The year is 1957. Picture the blinding intensity of the Pacific sun beating down on the shores of Christmas Island. On the deck of a Royal Navy ship, a young man named John Matthews braces himself. There is no sound at first, only a flash of light so absolute, so white, that it seems to sear through his closed eyelids and straight into the bone. Then comes the heat, like the sudden roar of a furnace door flung wide, followed by the terrifying rumble of a power that would change the course of human history. John was one of thousands of young British servicemen standing at the ground zero of our atomic age. Now, shift the scene to the present. The tropical heat is gone, replaced by the grey British drizzle and the stale air of a shut-in room. John is now 87 years old. The thunder of the detonation has faded into a heavy, suffocating silence. He sits in a house where the telephone rarely rings, and the world feels increasingly distant. John represents a generation of veterans currently caught in a perfect storm of declining health, invisible wounds, and a support system that feels like a digital labyrinth they cannot navigate. This is an investigation by Exposure Magazine into a matter of national importance. This is The Forgotten Heroes. We are looking beyond the history books to a contemporary crisis facing nearly 500,000 veterans. What happens when the heroes of our atomic age are left behind by the digital one? How can a nation truly honour a service that carried such a heavy, hidden price? The story of John Matthews is not an isolated one. It is a single, poignant thread in a much larger and more troubling tapestry of the ex-service community. For these men, the hardest battle didn't end with a ceasefire. It began the moment they returned to civilian life, the hidden crisis of isolation. To understand the sheer scale of this struggle, we must look at the numbers. Those statistics are merely the shadows of a very real human cost. Data from the Royal British Legion's 2014 household survey reveals a reality defined by profound loneliness. Imagine a city the size of Coventry. Now, imagine that every single person in that city, every neighbour, every worker, every elderly resident feels completely alone. That is the weight of 370,000 veterans reporting a sense of total isolation. This isn't just about a lack of company. It is a fundamental disconnection from the society they once protected. This isolation is the final link in a cascade of interconnected problems that exceed any individual's ability to cope. For approximately 630,000 veterans, the simple act of leaving the house has become a trial. Mobility issues are the walls of a silent prison. When you add the 720,000 people struggling with basic self-care, men and women living with daily exhaustion and chronic pain, you see a crisis of health that spirals into a crisis of the soul. It is a self-perpetuating cycle. Physical pain restricts movement. Limited movement breeds isolation. And isolation feeds the depression that currently affects nearly 480,000 of our veterans. While this is a challenge for all who served, there is one community for whom the burden is uniquely invisible and uniquely heavy. The Forgotten Heroes, the nuclear legacy and the medical gap. For the British nuclear survivor community, the wounds are often written into their very DNA. Research from the Centre for Health Effects of Radiological and Chemical Agents has illuminated a complex web of ailments specific to those who served during the testing programs between 1952 and 1967. These survivors live with a litany of physical legacies: persistent skin conditions, dental decay, early hearing loss, and cataracts. But the trauma refuses to stop at the veterans themselves. As the research reveals, the anxiety is intergenerational. 38% of veterans and their spouses and 8% of their descendants report deep psychological distress. They live with the haunting worry that the radiation they encountered decades ago is now manifesting in their children and grandchildren as rheumatoid arthritis, thyroid disease, or multiple sclerosis. Yet, when these survivors seek help, they often meet a wall of silence. There is a fundamental disconnect in the consulting room. Most GPs are, through no fault of their own, poorly equipped to handle the complexities of ionizing radiation. This creates a silence that leaves veterans stranded. The government's war pension scheme often fails this community because it demands reliable evidence to prove a causal link. But how do you produce records that are 60 years old, or in many cases entirely missing or inaccessible? It is a profound injustice to ask a man to prove the origin of his suffering when the records were never given to him in the first place. This creates a significant, persistent, unmet need that moves from the medical clinic to the kitchen table, where the costs of care begin to mount. Bridging the care chasm. Faced with this care gap, the devastating financial chasm between state provision and the actual cost of long-term care, the Nuclear Community Charity Fund, or NCCF, has launched a new lifeline. These are the Ground Zero support grants. This initiative marks a strategic shift from ad hoc assistance to a structured, evidence-based system. The NCCF understands that the needs of its community are evolving faster than the state can react. While their Care, Wellbeing and Inclusion Fund still handles immediate needs like stair lifts or broken heating systems, the Ground Zero grants are designed to tackle the ongoing heavy costs of sustained care. However, this support is not a simple handout. It is a process of responsible stewardship. For the veteran, it often feels like running a gauntlet. To qualify, an applicant must first navigate the bureaucratic obstacles of a local authority financial assessment and prove they have pursued NHS Continuing Healthcare funding. Only when these state avenues are exhausted or fall short can the grant bridge the gap. It is a necessary rigor to ensure sustainability, but it highlights the immense pressure placed on 80-year-olds to prove their need. And even when the funding is secured, a new wall is rising, one made of ones and zeros. The digital divide and the VALOUR initiative. As our world moves toward a future where every support portal and healthcare appointment is digitized, we are inadvertently locking the door on those who served in an analog age. Currently, 2.3 million people in the UK aged 65 and over do not use the internet. For an elderly veteran, an online-only form is not a convenience. It is a barrier to their basic rights. To combat this postcode patchwork of fragmented services, a major macro solution has been introduced. The VALOUR initiative. This is a £50 million revolution overseen by the Office for Veterans Affairs. VALOUR is about proactive, assertive engagement. It uses regional field officers to unite charities and local government. It channels resources using data, not guesswork. Most importantly, it is designed to find the hidden veterans, those who have dropped off the radar or are experiencing homelessness. This program, endorsed by SSAFA, the Armed Forces charity, is currently being piloted in Northern England. The rhythm of support is changing. It is becoming more direct, more coordinated, more focused on reaching the veteran where they are, rather than waiting for them to find a website they cannot access. We are seeing a revolution in care, but for a generation aged 80 and over, the most precious resource is not money. It is time, a matter of honour. As we conclude this investigation, we must look beyond the grant structures and the initiatives. We must look at the face of John Matthews and thousands like him. Supporting our veterans is not an act of charity, it is a test of our national character. These men and women stood in the breach in circumstances we can barely imagine, and they are still paying the price for that service today. Their struggles with isolation and the complexities of the care system are not their failings. They are ours. John Matthews once said, "We didn't serve for recognition or rewards. We served because it was our duty. But now, in our final years, we just want to know that service meant something, that we won't be forgotten." The question for us as a society is simple. Will we honour that service with actions that match our words? For the heroes of the atomic age, the moment for that answer is right now. This has been a production of Exposure magazine. Our thanks to the British nuclear survivor community and the NCCF for the source material used in this report. For more information on the stories covered today, visit our website at exposure.press. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for joining us today as we bring Exposure magazine to life. Like, subscribe and share for more great podcasts.